Welcome, Butterscotch Queens and Kings, to your only source for inclusive and comprehensive crypto coverage. This is The Get Down, a podcast diving deep into Web3 and DeFi. I'm your host, Ritzy P. Each episode, I get down with diverse founders, builders, change makers, and executives in the cryptoverse. The crypto industry is not a monolith. Black, Latino, and indigenous stories matter. Join diverse discussions on policy trends and market research about the blockchain ecosystem. Welcome to The Get Down. Hola, and welcome to the Get Down Beyond Bitcoin podcast. I'm Ritzy P, and in this episode's All Things Butterscotch segment with CEO and Managing Editor of Butterscotch Media, Cleve Mesidor, we'll go into what's happening with Butterscotch with our second year anniversary. And then later in this episode, I'll have a conversation with Malik Corbett, the co-founder and CEO of Hekaton. Malik's career in finance has spanned over 15 years, working for firms such as Bloomberg Financial, JP Morgan, and MDSL. We'll dive into his journey as an early pioneer in DeFi. So now, let's get into all things Butterscotch with Cleve Mesidor. Hi, Cleve. How are you?
Hey, Ritzy. Oh, my God. I can't believe it's already 2026, and we're a quarter of the way in. How did we get here?
I know. So speaking of, we're going to be, next month will be the 2-year anniversary of Butterscotch Media. Tell us more of how it's been and what we, can look forward to.
Yeah, well, it's 2 years of Butterscotch Media. And as you know, we sought to build a platform so we can talk about inclusion in the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. We wanted to highlight the diverse founders, the builders, the influencers, the executives, the policymakers who are really growing this $4 trillion market, but don't get coverage in the media, and people don't hear enough about them. And I am so proud of what we've built, and I'm so proud that you've been part of this journey. So thank you for answering the call and joining as the podcast host, but doing such a great job. I will say that for Butterscotch, we reach over 10,000, and the extended reach is probably, double that. But more than a third of our subscribers are Capitol Hill staffers. Another third is about, the crypto industry, but another third is, folks in policy, folks across different industries, folks across public institutions. So we're really excited about our reach going into, embarking on a third year and figuring out where to go next, what to do next. So very excited about all of the many milestones before us.
Awesome. Yes. And she's talking about the Choose newsletter that she does every week. It's filled with so much information. And so make sure we'll have links in the show notes for you to sign up and participate in that. So going into season 2 of the podcast, can you tell us a little bit more about the updated name?
Yeah. So, you just mentioned Choose. It's our weekly tip sheet. Comes out every Monday. Oh, my God. And I get so many emails from folks saying, thank you. This is where I get the most information. People sharing it with their colleagues. So the newsletter has been great. And, we're going to talk about the podcast, but we also do live events. So that's the beauty of, Butterscotch. We are a platform, a niche media platform, a suite, a studio, so the weekly newsletter, the monthly podcast, the live journalism has been great in terms of making sure we're building trust with our subscribers, but also making sure our audience gets quality information. So our podcast last year, we changed the name from just The Get Down to The Get Down, Beyond Bitcoin. But also we're going into season 2. So our first season, we had these amazing, guests, including Congressman Darren Soto from Florida, including Kristen Smith, who's the former CEO of the Blockchain Association, including, Monica Talon from Crypto Connection. So this season, we're excited to go deeper the policy landscape has changed. So the podcast conversations are going to change. We've seen, that we've had to change the tip sheet, choose, cover so much more information. We operate at that intersection of policy and blockchain and cryptocurrency. But we're very excited, and certainly we're excited about, this first episode of season 1. And I think the audience is in for a treat with your conversation with Malik.
Speaking of Malik, how do you know Malik?
I'm a big fan of Malik. He is, this uber entrepreneur who's doing amazing things in the DeFi space. We actually met last year at a Blockchain Association event. As the audience knows, I've been collaborating with the Blockchain Association since 2018, 2019. And Malik's organization, Hekaton, used to be a member of the Blockchain Association. They were a member company. I don't think they are this year, but it was so refreshing to meet Malik and hear about the great work that he was doing. And I said, he has to be a part of the podcast. So excited to share his story.
I'm excited to, share the story with everyone else as well. And you mentioned earlier about Butterscotch Media, how we have the newsletter, the tip sheet, we have the podcast and, live journalism. Can you talk about something that's coming up in April as a live event?
Yes. So the live journalism is actually, where we actually get to sometimes at a conference do a live podcast or do a live event to get some of our speakers as part of the conversation. But this time we want to highlight the fact that niche digital media is really has really overtaken traditional media in terms of trust, in terms of reach, in terms of relevance. Right? So we know the data shows that, large media legacy institutions are struggling to connect with their audiences, their readers, their viewers. But niche media is, doing a great job in terms of filling that gap and making sure the audience various audiences have access to information. So against the backdrop of the annual Washington, D.C. Correspondents' Dinner Week and Weekend that happens every year in Washington, they call it D.C. Media Prom, it's called. I think it's called the Nerd Prom, but I'll say, D.C. Media Prom. But against that backdrop, as well as April is Financial Education Month, so we really want to use April, again, because it's a focus on financial education, as well as, the DC media big party bashes happening. We want to have a conversation with niche media outlets. So Butterscotch Media, we're bringing about 4 media platforms together. You'll be participating. Excited to have you participate to talk about how we actually curate content for our audiences, how we build trust, how we make sure that we're relevant and meeting the needs of small groups, which is where the future of media is coming. So for the audience, stay tuned. The registration platform will be available soon. We're very excited about this conversation. We think it's very timely. And, we want to celebrate the niche media outlets that are focused on financial education, that are focused on the future of finance, and really share this conversation about how we build and what the opportunities and challenges are. So stay tuned. We're calling it Trust Media.
I'm excited for this live event and for everyone to participate because this is, like you said, timely. It's very important, and the niche media is where people go to because they trust the host and they kind of follow their lead, and so that's why this is very, very important. So speaking of crypto, DeFi, all that stuff, could you talk a little bit? You're so entrenched, you're on boots on the ground and you're all over the place. Could you give us a little bit of information on the state of crypto policy, this year, and maybe some things that happened last year that you want to point out?
Yeah. So, last year was very pivotal. Obviously, we had a new president, a new administration come in, a very crypto-friendly president and administration. And, we actually passed the first, single bill on crypto into law. The Genius Act, as people hear about it, but it was really a stablecoin bill that actually became law. And we are now in the rulemaking process. And why does that matter? At the end of the day, the Genius Act really determined who could actually issue stablecoins. But that was an important first step. And now most people don't realize just because a bill becomes law doesn't mean that that's the end of it, right? The regulators have to decide, what are the rules for the SEC? What are the rules for the OCC? What are the rules for NCUA? Because the Genius Law created a pathway for credit unions to become issuers of stablecoins via their subsidiaries called QSOs. So, last year that was the biggest thing. And I do want to give, credit to the work that, former Congressman McHenry did along with Congresswoman Maxine Waters. They spent years working on that piece of legislation. It definitely passed last year under this current administration, but we deserve a lot of work for what they did to actually get stablecoin legislation to where it is. And this year we're debating market structure. I will tell you, market structure is a heavier lift. There has been pushback on the stablecoin law by banks and their trade groups, and so the market structure legislation that is being debated in the Senate right now, as the audience knows, the House passed their Clarity Act. They actually passed the market structure legislation because the House Agriculture Committee and the House Financial Services Committee joined together on Clarity and passed the law early on. So now the Senate is not in a position to do that. So Senate Ag has a bill and they've marked it up because the CFTC is under Agriculture Committees, and the Senate Banking Committee has a bill but hasn't gone to markup. So we're now in debate. I do want to share with the audience that, in my professional capacity, I'm the executive director for Blockchain Foundation, and we actually proposed an amendment to the Senate market structure bill and the Senate banking market structure bill. The amendment would actually call for a federal study. It would call for the funding of a federal study by the OCC, the FDIC, and the Fed to actually look at what is the pathway for CDFIs and MDIs, these small institutions that meet the needs of banking deserts in rural and urban America. What is the pathway for them to potentially be authorized for digital assets? Is the role of Washington? There's always opposition. We were very disappointed that this amendment of a federal study that does nothing but study the issue faced opposition by this trade group called the Community Development Bankers Association. The Community Development Bankers Association opposed this. They lobbied against it to Senate Democratic staffers and essentially torpedoed the amendment. It's ironic because in the Genius Act and stablecoin, we actually passed legislation to create a pathway for credit unions. Why this organization would actually, essentially block something that would at least study, a pathway for, CDFIs and MDIs is beyond me. I tried to reach out to them to find out the merits of why they didn't want to do this, and I heard that there wasn't any merits. They never got back to me, but it wasn't clear, which is unfortunate because the American public deserve more than just crypto ATMs and those kiosks, and legacy organizations like this Community Development Bankers Association should advocate for the members and what's right for Americans instead of for themselves. But we still have a long way to go. There's a lot of runway where all eyes are on the Senate Banking Committee because we still need them to do a markup. And even if they are able to do a markup, in the coming months, it will take a while to reconcile the Senate legislation with House legislation and go to conference and get a bill to the president's desk for signage. Hopefully we can get that done this year, but we're also, measuring success differently. There's a big housing bill in the Senate that is moving forward, and I share that because there's a provision in there. They've been shopping an anti-CBDC provision that has now landed in the Senate banking housing bill. There's a lot of back and forth debate happening in terms of when this should sunset, should it sunset. But, as I said, we have to measure success differently. And one of the things, is this housing bill and this small provision, that would say that we don't want a CBDC, which would be a central bank digital currency in the US, because that would essentially be surveillance money for the government. And so as you can see, there's a lot happening. There's a lot still to monitor. But for the audience, the important thing for them to know is that with the passing of the Genius Act and it becoming law, and now we're in the rulemaking, the merits of blockchain cryptocurrency are not up for debate beyond the fact that you can debate them. They are part of our financial system. They are part of our laws. They are here. We can definitely improve the process. We can definitely, bring more voices to the table and, do what we didn't do when we debated the internet in the 1990s. We created the laws and let the industry flow. And now, we saw with yield and so many groups saying, hey, let's talk about this. And we're leveraging the market structure bill to have a conversation about stablecoin yield and what that should look like. And there's been tons of debate about this. So, let's figure out the right rules. Let's take the time to come to terms. And even if we actually find a solution, if we need to come back to the table, let's do that. But let's not pretend the future of digital finance is not here and that cryptocurrency and blockchain are not part of the future. So, a big update on, policy. We like to say that for Butterscotch, we focus on policy, not politics. But, there's never been an industry that has so much implications for the, policy and rulemaking. So I'm glad that Butterscotch Media can really fill that void and make sure we keep our audience updated.
Right. As you have heard, that's why you should join the newsletter. That's why you should support and listen, watch these podcasts, these episodes, and participate in the events, because not only is Cleve knowledgeable, she's literally boots on the ground trying to make change policy so that we could all benefit from it. So that is very important. Thank you for everything that you do, Cleve. Speaking of all that you do, let's talk about, I can't keep up with you, Cleve. You are everywhere, all over the world. I'm exhausted just watching your updates. So let's talk about some of your 2026 activities so far.
Yeah, that's the one thing about, the crypto space. It keeps you busy. I tell people all the time, crypto is like football. Any given day, there's a football game somewhere.
Right.
Right. So, but, this year has been exciting. Every year is, exciting in terms of events and activities for crypto. One of the activities I was most excited about is in January, I got to participate in the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum in Davos, which was amazing. It ended up being the most historic Davos ever, with the largest U.S. delegation attending and with a huge, crypto presence. But, crypto has been present at Davos since 2017, thanks to GBBC led by Sandra Rowe. I was thrilled this year to be part of the GBBC delegation. I moderated a panel on tokenization, which is an important, aspect of cryptocurrency that, founders and builders and small businesses and small financial institutions are paying attention to. But Davos was such a transformational experience for me, being able to see the landscape of not just large, mega tech companies, but, countries like Brazil, countries like Nigeria, Belgium, across the spectrum of folks who are actually creating the future of digital finance. and going from, across the promenade, from house to house, and being part of the conversations. Like Semaphore had a great conversation with the CEO of Flutterwave out of Africa. So, Davos is such an interesting and overwhelming, platform. So I'm glad it was my first time going to, the WEF in Davos. I know, a lot of people want to go. I will say, on the world stage, we've advanced to a point of, globalization where there are so many centers of the world that are important. So while, Davos in Switzerland, looking at, the future from a Western lens, there's also a World Government Summit, a World Government Summit that happens every February in Dubai that happened right after Davos. So I have my eyes there, focused there next year to try to go to the World Government Summit in Dubai. And because obviously, when you look at the global south and its importance in digital finance, you saw a lot more countries convene, in Dubai in February. But, it would be nice to be able to go from Davos to the World Government Summit. I wish it wasn't such a expensive financial proposition for both. But, it was an honor to be present in Davos this year, especially at such a consequential convening, but also to moderate such an important conversation for GBBC on tokenization. This year is not unlike any other year. There's, so much going on. I'm excited. April, I'm speaking at a forum for Eve Wealth. Eve Wealth is a platform that focuses on women and bringing financial services to women, including digital assets. Last year, they had their first big conference, and they brought women in Web3, in finance together, in fintech. So I'm excited to be one of their speakers in Arizona in April. So that's one of the conferences I'm looking forward to. I'll be back as a speaker for Money 2020 later this year. So excited about that. I will say this year is an abbreviated year for a lot of reasons. Right? Most people know it's a midterm year, and this year the midterms are very, 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 very consequential, right? March kicked us off with, we saw races in Texas, in North Carolina, in Arkansas, but there's also the FIFA World Cup that's coming to the US. That is, oh my God, historic, right? And that will kick off in June. I'm excited. I'll be in Atlanta in July for the Haiti game. So if you're,
nice.
I believe the date is July 14, I have my ticket. I'll be there rooting on my birthplace, Haiti, in the World Cup. And believe it or not, this is the first time Haiti has qualified for the World Cup since the year I was born. in 1973. Haiti qualified. That was the last time they qualified for the World Cup. So the FIFA World Cup being, in the US, in Mexico, is a big deal. And then the 250-year anniversary, in the US, July is going to be all about that. So between FIFA World Cup, the 250th anniversary, then going into the midterm primaries and midterm election, I feel like we have a short runway for policy. We have a short runway for activities, but it's a pivotal year, so the audience should make sure they take advantage of all of these activities.
Thank you. And, if you want to keep abreast of where Cleve's at, make sure, again, to join the newsletter, because she just brought back one of people's favorite sections. What is it called? Where in the world is Cleve?
Yes. I do it sporadically, and I get all of these questions. Bring that back. I want to know where you're going to be. So now every month we're going to kick off the month with where in the world is Cleve, and I'll share where I'll be. So this way, if you'll be there, we can connect, because I know, crypto is still so early, and there are so many folks who need access points. So I'm happy to and honored to be a resource as needed.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Cleve. If you get a chance to see her speak live, please do. Cleve's been in this, space for such a long time, and she has never wavered when it comes to making sure that our people are represented, our communities are heard, and that policies reflect all of us. So thank you for that. And I look forward to our next discussion about all things butterscotch.
Thank you, Ritzy.
So let's welcome our butterscotch king, Malik Corbett, who is an entrepreneur, technologist, and financier. Malik is an Afro-Latino co-founder and CEO of Hekaton, a proprietary trading company focused on digital assets. In addition to his technical duties as a quant engineer on the trading desk assisting the team in building trading infrastructure and strategies, Malik oversees the strategic and business direction of the firm. Malik also brings a wealth of experience and technical skills, along with strong leadership skills, to help usher in the next generation of financial trading firm. So, Malik, thank you so much for joining us. Excited to dive into our conversation. Before we, talk about what you're building, can you tell us a little bit about your journey into crypto and what attracted you to the space?
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. So what got me into the space? I started out in traditional finance. I was cut my teeth at Bloomberg. And there, I managed, I was a sales representative. I oversaw Midwest states like Ohio and Illinois. And from there, I went on to a smaller firm called MDSL. What they did, they were a market data inventory management firm. And so I oversaw the North American business, was there for a few years, and then had this crazy idea to get into the startup world. And my wife looked at me like I was nuts when I decided to do that, leaving a really good paying job and going into the startup world. Went from there. My first foray into the startup world was actually worked for a sentiment mining company, which is, I guess it's like you can say it's a precursor to what we're seeing today with open AI and all these things. And what we were doing is we were taking like Twitter data and overlaying it with sentiment data over that. And firms would use that and trade over it. But that's where I met my current partner now. His name is Tynan Overstreet. And I was the chief revenue officer at this particular firm, and he was overseeing taking this high value data and creating trading strategies as research for firms to say, hey, what do we do with this data? That we got it. How do we implement this into a trading strategy? And he was the one who was responsible for that. But him and I, we kind of saw that it was a bubble. This was around like 2015. And we said, hey, let's start our own thing. And so in 2016, we started Hekaton together. We had a founder's moment. And we quickly, got into crypto, and we've been trading proprietary since then. We raised a little bit of money from family and friends, and we've been off to the races since then.
Wow, it's crazy that you've been in the space for such a long time. I'm sure you've seen it evolve. So it's such a treat to have someone that's, considered to be a DeFi expert on the show. There's so much confusion out there about decentralized finance. That's what DeFi stands for. What would be your 1-minute definition of what DeFi is?
Yeah, it is jarring when you think about DeFi because it's so different from traditional finance. But I would say it's an alternative financial system, right? That collapses the friction and the cost between like intermediaries in the traditional sense. So, it does away with, like a centralized exchange. It does away with the broker dealer. It does away with the transfer agent. Things like that is very expensive in traditional finance. And so it collapses those costs. And it's an open infrastructure that anyone around with an internet access around the world can actually transact and do things.
Awesome. Thank you for that 1 minute definition.
Hopefully
So
that's a
now
good
let's discuss your path to becoming a developer and builder. It's clear from your background and a little bit what you told us already. You're a serial entrepreneur and innovator. What led you into the creation of Hekaton?
Yeah, so we initially, when we first started, we initially had a platform that we call Slice Matrix, and it was a platform that basically took like one-liners in Python and spun up models. So it was a wrapper around like machine learning models. So when quants want to create different types of strategies, they use models within those strategies. And so these were easy ways to spin it up. But as we quickly found out is that when you're dealing with quants, they don't really want to rip out the things that they have already internally. A lot of it is proprietary, or they're using third-party software that's very well known. So we pivoted and went into crypto. So we started eating our own food, and we used that in crypto, and it was very successful. And so we also had a couple of ideas that we wanted to open up a DEX and do the different things of that nature. But the regulatory environment, especially in 2016, 2017, was really tough, and we thought we were too good looking to go to jail, so we decided not to do that, and we were prop trading, and we were also experimenting with different technologies and stuff like that, but we weren't putting out necessarily out there in the open. So that's what we were doing. We were really experimenting, learning a lot, because it's really different from traditional finance. And, now that the regulatory environment has cleared up, it opens the door for a lot of the things that we learned, a lot of things that we have internally to, have it more public facing.
Right. Speaking of public facing, let's talk about, your new effort, the Atomic Vault system. If you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about the Atomic Vault system. A vault is basically just a way for people to stake and self-custody, but stake into a particular strategy and be able to generate or earn yield, right? So instead of the person creating different types of exotic strategies and stuff like that themselves, which takes a lot of expertise and networking and in trading itself, instead of having all that expertise, you can leverage that on a vault, on a blockchain. So it's the new way of an investment platform. I don't want to give too much away. We have our own spin on this. We think that it's going to be a big hit, and we're very excited about it. We're going to release it in the second quarter of this year. That's when we plan to release it. So around May, we're looking to release that out into the public. So we're really excited about it. Right now, we have the first vote that will be going out is a market neutral vote, which is really cool because right now you can see we're in a bear market. Volatility is really, really crazy. So what market neutral really means is that you don't care if the market goes up or down. It's still supposed to make money no matter what. So that's the first vault we're going to put out so people can earn yield. And we're super excited. It's doing really well. Right now, it's been running since September 1st, and it's up over 45%. It's with sharps of like over 8. So it's really cool, and we're really excited. But we want it to be a platform where people can find different types of strategies, and it doesn't have to be our strategy. It could be anybody's, any external manager strategy. And if they like it, they like the characteristics of it, it'll be as easy as downloading an app on your phone. You can easily get access to these strategies. But most importantly, you have control of your money, right? Like that's the cool thing. The manager never has custody of it, and person can call for their money anytime they want or redeem their money anytime they want. So it's a really cool, what we call unstaking. It's not redemption. That's the traditional way. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's super exciting, especially with so many people that are getting a little bit more curious about it and having kind of like a place where it's not as complicated to navigate, right? That's what it sounds like a one-stop shop so that you can explore and stuff. So that's fantastic.
That's exactly what we're trying to do. Make it easy for people to use the system, because it is complicated. A lot of the interfaces that you're going to use to work into DeFi, admittedly, it is complicated in some of these applications.
Yeah, and it can be intimidating. You're just like, it's too overwhelming. I can't do it. But if you make it like this, so very excited to see when that launches. You said in May. We'll keep an eye on that for sure.
Absolutely.
I'm sure the audience is curious about your impact. So if you want to, give yourself some flowers and share, some of the most proud moments as a startup founder, because I know that road isn't easy.
It definitely is not easy. I don't normally give myself flowers, but I guess if I was going to give myself some flowers, I think just being here, right? We've been doing this for like 8 years, right? Is an accomplishment in itself, right? Yes. It's really hard, especially being, a minority founder, right? It's not easy in terms of trying to, especially, and being in high tech, right? Like that is another thing, right? It's like I'm a unicorn in itself. You don't really see a lot of African Americans or Latinos in the space. So, that in itself that I'm here. There's an essay that if anybody who's into or who wants to be an entrepreneur, there's an essay by Paul Graham. I believe it's called "Avoid Dying" or something like that. People should look it up. But the whole premise of it is that the longer that you stay in the game and that you be an entrepreneur, whatever you have to do to stay in the game, eventually you're going to get rich, right? You're eventually going to. And so being an entrepreneur is really staying in the game, right? And finding ways to not run out of money until you get your idea off the ground, right? That is a very important thing, and I don't think enough people talk about that. So I think that in itself just proves, your longevity proves that you're doing the right thing. So that in itself, to me, is an accomplishment. The second thing I think is, I would say, another milestone I'm happy about or I'm proud about is the culture that we've built here. I would like to say that the way I approach my partnerships, the way I approach the stakeholders, it builds a very family environment. So that in itself, the culture that we're building here and the way that we're going about doing business, to me, is something I'm extremely proud about, because that's the foundation, right? Because after, you have your founders, but then how you guys form that foundation is where the company is going to go. And you got to constantly work at that. It's not easy. You're not always going to get along with your partners. You're not always going to like your partners and whatnot. But it's like a marriage, like anything. You have to work at it. You have to continue. You have to grow yourself, and that growth is evidence of just success that we have. So all that, I'm really excited. In addition to the success we had, we've made a lot of money. We're doing a lot of good things in the space. So those things are cool. But without those two things, knowing how to survive, pursuing good ideas, and knowing how to execute, and then being able to build a culture. Without those two things, I think it's really difficult to be an entrepreneur, especially if you think it's about being a lone ranger. That's very rare that you see those companies succeed. I'm not saying there aren't. There's many talented people that can do a lot of things, but it's really difficult. You need partners, and you need to be able to understand that.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Thank you for pointing that out, especially because a lot of people don't talk about that. I was recently in a women's founder circle, and we were talking about the culture. Yeah, it would be great to have 1 million, ARR, but the fact that once someone said, the fact that I can leave my full-time job and support my family and do this, and I'm passionate about it, and I keep going, that's important, especially when it comes to, marginalized founders. We're just rewriting everything from scratch.
Absolutely.
So congratulations, on all your success as a visionary founder, an early pioneer in DeFi. So I also want to commend you for taking the steps to understand and navigate policy and and the regulatory landscape that you mentioned earlier, how that's shifted and changed as well. Why is it important for founders in crypto to stay informed about policies impacting crypto at a federal and local and state levels?
Well, I mean, you're not doing your job as a founder if you're not understanding every part of the ship, right? And policy is extremely important. That's how things get done, right? I mean, you need to, I'm not saying you got to join a policy organization, even though I would recommend that you do that, right? But you should be in the know about what's happening in Washington, what's happening on a state level, and how is that impacting your business, right? Especially from a nascent industry like DeFi. You don't have to be a government relations person or an attorney or anything like that, but you should have some friends who are those people that you should be talking to regularly. You should be on top of these things, because if you're not aware of what's going on in Washington, then you're going to be behind the eight ball, and it's going to be that much harder for you to succeed. I mean, that's just simple as that.
Right. And so what is your message to policy makers and regulators when you meet them?
Well, a lot of times when I speak with officials, the big message is educating them, right? Like explaining to them what DeFi is, because again, it is jarring. It's different than traditional finance, right? Like it's not the same. Even like the technology is just so different, so bizarre. A lot of things in DeFi meshes different components that you have in the traditional world. So how do you label some of these things? So education is a big thing. But beyond the education, the big message that I have for policymakers and for any policymakers that's listening here is to keep it bipartisanship, right? Like that is really important. I'm concerned more and more every day that it's becoming partisan, and that is. That's a concern, right? So I would say both parties should work together. This is this technology is really important for the future of our country. So if that's the case, if you're there to for the future of our country as policymakers and as lawmakers, then do your job and let's keep the politics aside.
So, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I have to ask you about the current crypto, but I am, right? If I'm saying that, I am about to. The current crypto bear market and the volatility we've seen. I don't want you to, this is not financial advice, but what is your take on all of this right now?
Ooh, all right. So we've been in a bear market since what? Since the big liquidation, which I call the crypto Black Friday, which was October 10th of 2025. So we've been in a bear market there. But there's a couple of things. I don't think crypto is going to outperform the traditional markets in a crash. And so I'm not saying that the traditional markets are going to crash, but I think that there are things that people need to understand, right? There are a number of macro forces that are converging right now, right? We have the AI bubble that we don't know if it's on this last leg or not. We don't know, but it's starting to have some cracks there. So we have that. Don't forget, we still have persistent inflation that is a thorn on people's side, especially if you look at the middle class, is really getting hammered with inflation, and it's really getting to be a problem. You have the tariffs, which is adding to the inflation and different things of that nature, right? And then the uncertainty of that. And let's not forget, a lot of people are not really talking about this. Well, some people are, I guess, but it's not, I don't think, spoken about enough. Private credit, there's a crisis in private credit, right? And we don't know how that's going to unfold. And we also now have a war with, U.S., Israel and Iran, and that's leading to an oil shock. And how does that, how long does that war? I guess a lot of I'm not an oil trader, but from what I'm seeing out there, 4 weeks is kind of like where it's at. Like, they're taking President Trump as his word that his 4 weeks is going to be done. But if it persists after 4 weeks, and from what I'm seeing, it looks like it may do that. Then what happens, right?
Right.
It could potentially cause a global recession. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen or not, but what I am very sure about is that I don't think crypto will outperform a crash. Now, that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. I mean, that just means that if it does happen, then that weak hands who are weak will go away, and the strong hands will come. So those are just natural things that happen, market forces. So I think that crypto will be fine, but I think that there is potentially a lot of volatility ahead, and it could be a rough 6 months, maybe for the rest of the year. But aside from that, you have those market forces. But then something else that's really important that I did not mention, we do need the market structure bill to pass, and particularly before the midterms. If that doesn't pass before the midterms, and then the Democrats come into the House, I don't think we're going to get a market structure anytime soon. And so, or at least until maybe after the presidential, the next presidential elections. So, those are things that that crypto has a risk of. That doesn't mean that crypto is not going to bounce back or do things, but those are challenges. Those are headwinds that are ahead for folks in crypto. So, I suspect that it's going to be a tough few months, especially in the short, intermediate view. That's my guess.
A tough go, because there's so many different factors that are moving parts for sure. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up with the closing questions?
Last thoughts. I mean, I would say that DeFi is, I think, on the verge of doing something really, really powerful, and we're seeing it now, right? Like, you're seeing a lot of talk about tokenization, right. and you also see a lot of, and it's very early, and I don't want to oversell what we're seeing on chain, but we are seeing billions of dollars. I think the last time I checked, it was like $25 billion on chain in terms of real world assets, and again, that's really tiny in comparison to the traditional markets, commodities and bonds and stuff like that. But I think that we're going to see a lot more of these, more of tokenization happening, and then when you add in, agentic or AI agentic, you have a recipe for something that can be very explosive. So I wouldn't, although there is going to be, I think, some tough moments in the short and intermediate term for crypto, I think that if you are a long-term investor or a long-term thinker here, I think that there's a lot of positivity here and a lot of opportunity here. So it's good not to be a trader, and I'm a trader, so I'm not saying, but unless you are really into this thing and you are a professional, I think it's good to be an investor in this situation, because you can there's a lot of opportunity, especially in the long term. I really believe it.
Okay. Thanks for sharing that. Let's get into the wrap-up questions. What is a fun fact about yourself that most people don't know?
Wow. A fun fact. Okay. I'm a martial artist. I study Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I also study boxing and all that. Well, I've been doing boxing for a while in Taekwondo, but I'm a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I compete.
Oh, nice.
So if you see me with a black eye out there once in a while, I'm not a street fighter. Sometimes I get an elbow to the eye or something like that. So I think that's a fun fact. That's pretty cool.
No, that's awesome. And a great skill to have, because you never know when you might have to use it. Hopefully not, but
especially if I get, big, like some of these crypto guys. Because I remember I went to, what was it last year? I went to the Salt. I went to out in Wyoming, And I saw some of these billionaires. They had their bodyguards with them. And I feel like, man, it'd be cool if I could be like my own bodyguard or something like that.
Right. No bodyguards needed. I'm my own bodyguard. Exactly. Hilarious. Is there anything you want to compel the audience to consider, after all the things that we talked about today?
It's a shameless plug, but hey, you should go visit the Atomic Vault .xyz and sign up and just keep up on the latest and greatest of what we're doing. There's a lot of exciting things coming up in this quarter, so please sign up. It's going to be really exciting.
Amazing. Yes. Make sure to sign up. And that goes into the last question. What are the best ways for people to contact you and keep up with all the amazing things you're doing?
Yeah, I guess I'll send this over to you, but LinkedIn is a big thing. I'm on X as well, but not too much, but I'm on there scouting. I think those are the two places that if people want to talk and chat with me, I'm definitely at those places. But I'll send you so you guys can post it up here.
Perfect. We'll put them in the show notes for sure. And, Malik, thank you for joining us today. Special thanks to our Butterscotch queens and kings out there for joining the conversation. And be sure to check out all of the Get Down Beyond Bitcoin episodes on your favorite platforms. Until next time.